Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 7th October 2020, and these are the couple of issues that we'll be discussing today. The first article for the day is taken from The Hindu and it is titled The Disintegration of the Criminal Justice System. Now let us understand what a criminal justice system means and what is the basis for this in our country. So essentially, when we talk about criminal justice system, we talk about all those processes as well as institutions which try to attain the objectives laid down by law and order. Now in our country, we have to understand that this processes and institutions are designed by the British era laws. So in order to address the present needs, there is a definite need to overhaul this criminal justice system. Now when we talk about this process and institutions, what we are basically talking about is the Criminal Procedure Code and also the Indian Penal Code. So these laws are framed in 1860. In 1973, keeping in tune with the principles of the Directive Principles of State Policy, Criminal Procedure Code was amended. But still the Indian Penal Code has been amended haphazardly in a piecemeal manner, and we still stick to the 1860 Indian Penal Code. So this Criminal Procedure Code is a part of the concurrent list, and when we are talking about the criminal justice system, we have to talk about all these processes and institutions. Basically we are talking about laws, and all these processes and laws and institutions together aim to create a simple objective of ensuring security of its citizens, peace of its citizens, and maintaining the law and order of the state. Let us get into the details of this article, and let me give a brief intro about the Hathras gang rape and murder that happened on 14th September 2020 and what followed later. So on 14th of September 2020, a 19-year-old Dalit woman was gang raped in Hathras district of Uttar Pradesh, and allegedly it was done by 4 upper caste men. After fighting for 2 weeks, she died in a Delhi hospital. This is the seriousness of the case, and yet the victim's brother claimed that no arrests were made in the first 10 days after the incident took place, and even after her death, the victim was forcibly cremated by the police without the consent of her family, a claim denied by the police. So the case and its subsequent handling has been a subject matter of widespread criticism, and it also got media attention, and this has been the reason for which we are talking about the present state of criminal justice system and the context of this article. In this context, let us try to understand the two different kinds of systems when we are delivering justice. One is called the adversarial system and the other one is called the inquisitorial system. So in this adversarial system, what happens is courts just play a role of being a umpire of a sort or a referee of a sort when two lawyers, the prosecution as well as the defense, try to argue their case. So the defense lawyer is in the defense of the victim and the prosecution tries to press charges against the alleged candidate. So in this system, the courts don't have any role in investigation. But when we're talking about the inquisitorial system, which India does not have, there is an active role played by the courts in investigations also. So this is the kind of system that is followed in the Western countries. So India has been urged to move towards inquisitorial system by various committees like the Malimat system because of one important reason, that is investigation. In this investigation, because of the probability of nexus between police and politicians, the entire investigation process has been hijacked by the executive. Whereas in the inquisitorial system, since judiciary is an independent branch and the police have to fear the politicians because of transfers, but if judiciary is involved, politicians can't do this. So this is the logic with which judiciary was asked to intervene in the investigation processes in the country. But again, the counter argument for this is that the judiciary is already overburdened, and secondly, we also have cases where the judiciary has been alleged of corruption. Now, in the case of police, at least we have a checks and balances in the form of judiciary. But what if judiciary actually commits crimes and corruption? What will be the checks and balances, and what will be the kind of mechanism? So this is the debate and the context of the justice delivery system in our country, which has been going on for quite a lot of time right now. So in our country, when we're talking about the criminal justice system, it is basically about this entire chain of events. Firstly, there is an allegation or a complaint raised by a complainant that a crime has been perpetuated against him or her, and this will be followed by an investigation by the law enforcement agencies. In our country, it is the police, and police is a state subject. Please remember that every state has their own state police laws, and mostly they are based on the 1860 Police Act of British era. And after the investigation process, they collect the evidence and put it for a trial before the judiciary. And after following the due process of law as per the CRPC and IPC, if the alleged person is found guilty, he will be punished, and if he is not, he is left alone. So this punishment is the biggest deterrent to stop this crime. Now, in a criminal justice system, it is not only to carry out this investigation and punish it, but it is also the responsibility of the law enforcement agencies to stop this crime from happening in the first place. Now, in order to stop this crime, the fear of punishment should be there. The problem is, if we take a look at the statistics, only 46% conviction rate is there in our country. This is as per the Crime in India report. Averaging out in the last 4-5 years, it is not more than 46 to 48%. So if that is the case, there is no question of fear being arised, and even if he is punished, the accused will eventually come out on bail, and there is absolutely no fear that this would destroy their lives and their careers. Now, the second problem is the investigation. States, as in the political entities at the subnational level, are empowered through their legislators to create laws with respect to law and order. Now, law and order being a state subject, and the employees are subject to the whims and fancies of the MLAs, there is a strong nexus between MLAs and the police department. So this is the allegation made that because of this nexus, investigation process is being not followed. Now, since the very first step is not followed, in this present case, even there are allegations that FIRs are also not properly followed. They did not even recognize that the person was raped and killed. So in this context, it is important to understand this impartial investigation procedure is the significant and the most important aspect of the entire chain of events in this criminal justice system. If the very first step is thwarted, there is no point in having the next step. Now let us try to take a look at the situation in Uttar Pradesh, where there have been extreme reactions both from the public and as well as the police. If we take the encounter case of Vikas Dubey, who was allegedly escaping police custody and had to be killed down by the police, in that case also there was allegation that the UP police have carried out a fake encounter and the due process of law was not followed. Similarly, another case which happened in Tamil Nadu, where a police officer has resorted to custodial violence, which has led to the death of a father and a son together. So these are extreme examples as to how the law and order can be taken into hands by the police department and the allegations that follow. So in this context, we have to understand that there is a significant role for the rule of law in our criminal justice system. So when our other wings of the government, we have spoken about the role of the executive, that is the police department, in carrying out the investigation. We also have problems elsewhere as well. If we take a look at the prisons, there are a number of under trials. If we take a look at the judiciary, we have as many as 3 core cases in the lower courts themselves, which are pending from a very long time. If we take a look at the number of police in the entire state, they are severely undermanned, and this requires staffing more number of police, so they are overburdened with the work. So in this way, every organ of the criminal justice system needs a complete revamp. We need to move towards an inquisitorial system as suggested by the Justice Malimath Committee. So there were various other recommendations as taken up by Justice Malimath Committee. So they need to be debated in full, and time is ripe for a complete revamp of the Indian Penal Code. So this was last time taken up in 1860, and whatever issues that came up were taken up and haphazardly in a piecemeal manner were amended from time to time. But now is the time to consider the entire revamp of the Indian Penal Code and ensure that peace and security of citizens is given a priority. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Live Mint, and it is titled Marx Misread Capitalism, but we must not fall into the same trap. Understanding the nuances of this political ideology is very important, both from prelims as well as mains perspective. Previously it was considered only important for mains, but if we take a look at the recent prelims paper, there was a question on the comparison between Gandhiism and Marxism. So it is important to understand the nuances of this various political ideologies and the major criticisms of this political ideologies. So in this context, we will be reading about Marxism and capitalism in the economic context. Now the basic premise of Marxism is very simple. We have to create an egalitarian society. Now what is an egalitarian society? It is a society where every person has the ability to express his entire potential. So everyone is treated as equal. Now this is the basic premise and the end objective of the Marxism. It is against capitalism because it says that capitalism will create an unequal society or an unequal society, and it will perpetuate poverty. There is a division of classes, and this leads to unrest in a society. In order to establish peace, Marxism is the only way forward. Now, is this political ideology put into practice anywhere? Yes, we have the cases like Russia, we have the cases like Cuba, Venezuela, etc. But if we take a look at the kind of success it had in achieving this objective of egalitarian society, it was very unsuccessful. We have to understand something which is very much a part of human nature. We all are different. We have different abilities and different capabilities in achieving economic progress. So we cannot afford to treat everyone equally. Now, in a company that is making multi-million dollars also, a entry level graduate will not be working in the same way a CEO is working. So it is simply not right to compare the work done by CEO and also a entry level person and say that both should be given a same kind of salary. This is simply not acceptable to any rational human being. So for all these practical reasons, Marxism, even though appreciable on various other fronts, but we are restraining our discussion only to the economic front, has failed to achieve this objective of egalitarian society because it failed to recognize this inherent human nature where every person is aspiring for something that is more than just survival. Everyone needs different things. There is whenever there is a scope for expressing your potential, only then the society evolves. So there should be certain incentive to work more. If a CEO gets the same amount of salary as an entry level graduate, there will be no motivation for this CEO, and there will be no innovation in the entire ecosystem at all. So Capitalism has a positive connotation in this front. Capitalism incentivizes merit. But does that mean everything about capitalism is good? Obviously not. If you take a look at the present companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google, we are moving towards a digital era where our economies are closely linked to digital era. So in this context, if we are not in a position to leverage this digital technology, it will act as a roadblock for our development. So in this context, we have to understand that it is important to have access. So what is the role that the government should play? Now if the government does not play the role it envisages for itself, what happens? The reason, as rightly recognized by Marxism, will be a rise in inequality. Now when we are talking about inequality, we have a parameter called Gini coefficient. If we take a look at the countries, even United States has a very high Gini coefficient, meaning that there is a high inequality in the system. Now Gini coefficient is a measure of inequality in the system. So in order to reduce this Gini coefficient, what we have to do is ensure that every stakeholder in a economy is incentivized properly. Now for that to happen, the government must play the role of a regulator and a facilitator rather than being a service provider. So we have to ensure that this happens. Now how is the question? In capitalism, the antidote to inequality is competition. So whenever we see any anti-competitive practices, it is the role of the government and also the civil society to raise these concerns and bring it to the government's notice. So for example, Facebook was the first social medium which clicked on the networking front. So after the initial success of Facebook, it has went on to acquire Instagram, WhatsApp, and has literally gained all the kinds of data that is required for future communications and future advertisements. Now Facebook has slowly entered into even videos and the short content in the form of Instagram, which is a competition to TikTok. So this competition would have been a great idea because it leads to a concept called creative destruction. We have already discussed this concept in the previous videos as well. When we are talking about creative destruction, it is a phenomenon where innovation drives out old technologies and the economy will be creatively destructed. That is, it will move from bad companies to good companies or good ideas, or simply to say good inventions. Now if the big companies try to create monopolies, what they are basically trying to do is they are trying to kill these good inventions, or they are trying to acquire these good inventions. What this will lead to is small players are not at all having incentive to create something new, because it will simply be suppressed by the big players. This is similar to what happens in Marxism also, because there is no incentive for the smaller player to work. So monopolies and trying to create egalitarian societies contradictorily will eventually lead to inactivity and stagnation in an economy. Therefore, it is the role of the government to ensure that competition law and capitalism go hand in hand. We have to discourage the idea of monopolies and encourage the idea of good competition. That is the trap that this article writer is trying to talk about, which we should not fall into. That is the gist of this article.